A colossal explosion rips the earth apart, sending a pillar of fire straight to the heavens. The shockwave obliterates everything in its path, tossing bodies like rag dolls into the fiery sky. A scarred warrior stands amidst the chaos, questioning the destruction of the path they fought so hard to create. He glares up at a monstrous, shadowy entity, challenging its right to erase their efforts. The entity, Wuing, retorts with glowing eyes, claiming the power to create or destroy is his alone. The warrior, undeterred, speaks of his bond with his allies and his understanding of their sacrifice. His speech is cut short as a swift, unseen force brings his defiance to a sudden, brutal end. Wuing's hand closes with unstoppable force around a glowing object. A multicolored core, the source of immense power, begins to crack and splinter in his grip. Holding the shattered remains, he calmly states that true creation can only rise from absolute destruction. With the core shattered, Wuing declares that to create something new, the old must first be utterly demolished. His voice echoes through the void, proclaiming that as a new path is forged, the old one must inevitably fade away. The scene abruptly shifts to a bustling modern city, where life continues, oblivious to the cosmic judgment just passed. Yet beneath this veneer of normalcy, a powerful spiritual wave signals that a new legendary story is about to begin. A crowd gathers around a mysterious, ornate coffin that has suddenly appeared, pulsing with an eerie, unknown energy. A young man calmly identifies the object, holding an intricate compass that seems to react to the strange phenomenon. He demonstrates his expertise, explaining the area's feng shui makes it a perfect magnet for dark energy and the undead. This professional dowist, also named Wuing, warns that the coffin's powerful aura suggests a century-old jiangshi is sealed within. A group of Western exorcists scoffs at his claims, dismissing his knowledge and mistaking his nationality. They openly accuse the young Taoist of being a liar, attempting to scam them with his fantastical theories. A sharp clap cuts through the tension, demanding everyone's attention. A prominent businessman arrives, confirming the coffin is the source of the recent hauntings in Times Square. Identified as Donald, he offers a $1 million reward to anyone who can handle the situation. Spurred by the prize money, a yoga master is the first to strike, breathing a jet of mystical fire. A priest, a ninja, and other exorcists immediately follow, unleashing their own sacred techniques. A chaotic storm of spiritual attacks from every tradition rains down upon the mysterious coffin. Yet, despite the massive onslaught, the coffin remains completely unscathed, its eerie green aura unwavering. Wuing calmly explains their powers are useless against such an advanced magic array, earning him their fury. He corrects their insults about his nationality, just as a smug newcomer dismisses the entire group as failures. This man, Jack of the Starry Wisdom cult, mocks their old beliefs, proclaiming only his god is truly omnipotent. Jack shoves his way through the crowd, dismissing the other exorcists and claiming he was personally invited. With a hand crackling with icy energy, he declares that only those who can solve the problem truly matter. He unleashes a torrent of purple spiritual power, which appears to overwhelm the coffin's defenses in a brilliant flash. The other specialists watch in disbelief as the coffin's powerful aura seems to vanish in an instant. Jack confidently rests his hand on the coffin, taking full credit for dispelling the massive spiritual wave. But Wuing calls him out as a fraud with no real power, just as a sinister green energy erupts from the coffin. A thick, eerie mist engulfs the panicked crowd, which Wuing calmly identifies as concentrated, malevolent energy. He explains the green aura is actually a ghost path, a bridge between realms created by a powerful refining array. Wuing reveals that attacking the array with brute force only springs its hidden trap. The trap is revealed. The released malevolent energy will summon all the vengeful spirits in the area. Donald recoils in terror as Wuing explains that since normal people can see the spirits, they can now cause physical harm. The Taoist identifies the apparitions as a horde of resentful, aggressive ghosts, each with a tragic and bitter backstory. With glowing green eyes and symbols, the enraged spirits surge forward in a terrifying wave of aggression. The ghosts immediately swarm Donald, who cries out for help as his bodyguard's bullets pass harmlessly through them. Spurred by the need to protect their client, the other exorcists finally leap into action, forming a defensive line. The priest watches in alarm as the horde of vengeful spirits actively attacks the assembled specialists. Believing Wuing is powerless, the priest offers him protection, to which the young Taoist simply expresses his thanks. Wuing suddenly intercepts a ghost attacking the priest, noting with a punch that his nationality was finally stated correctly. He then unleashes a flurry of devastating blows, effortlessly sending multiple spirits flying as the priest watches in disbelief. Distracted by the shock of the assault, Jack clutches his head, struggling to focus and summon his own holy power. Jack finally unleashes his power, using purple tendrils of energy to fend off the swarming spirits. He notes that while the ghosts are individually weak, their sheer endless numbers are overwhelming. The other specialists collapse from exhaustion, leaving Jack as the only one seemingly holding his own against the horde. His confidence wavers as he notices Wuing is still fighting with impossible ease, barely breaking a sweat. Jack demands to know who Wuing is, but the Taoist simply states he's going to end this at the source and warns Jack not to run. Reminding Jack of his payment, Wuing leaps atop the ornate coffin, ready to confront the true problem. His action draws the full, undivided attention of the entire ghost horde, their glowing eyes locking onto him. Unfazed, he stands calmly on the coffin as a sea of spectral hands reaches up, trying to drag him down. He activates a talisman, unleashing a massive purifying wave that instantly obliterates every ghost in the vicinity. In the sudden, deafening silence, both Jack and Donald stare in utter disbelief at the now empty square. Wuing reveals that cleansing the ghosts was merely the first step of his true plan. With a powerful kick, he sends the coffin lid flying, intentionally awakening the king sealed within. A demonic figure shrouded in a terrifying red aura rises, its power far exceeding a normal zombie's. A new, elegantly dressed blonde man appears, casually dismissing the creature's power as unimpressive. Both Donald and the newcomer realize this creature is not a Chinese jiangshi, but something else entirely. The blonde man's calm demeanor shatters as he begins to identify the true nature of the beast. His eyes flare with red light as he recognizes the creature with dawning horror, a vampire. The newly identified vampire bursts from the coffin in a blur of red, moving with blinding speed. It immediately targets the blonde man, who looks up in shock as the monster descends upon him. The vampire lands a devastating strike, overwhelming the blonde man in a violent explosion of energy. The blonde man is violently thrown back, his own power completely overwhelmed by the vampire's raw force. Clutching his injured arm, he realizes his divine technique was effortlessly dissolved by the creature's attack. He understands this is no ordinary monster, but a pure-blooded vampire radiating immense ancient power. Faced with this terrifying reality, the so-called expert makes the only logical choice. He turns and runs. In a cowardly move, he grabs the terrified Donald, knowing the newly awakened vampire needs a fresh meal. With a final glance, he shoves the businessman directly into the monster's path, creating a perfect diversion. The vampire ignores its fleeing attacker, instead lunging for the helpless new target presented to it. Donald cries out in agony as the creature sinks its fangs into him, his fate sealed in an instant. The vampire discards him, leaving the weakened businessman to plead for help that will never come. A swift final blow is delivered, bringing a brutal and definitive end to the businessman's life. Donald's bodyguards panic, firing their weapons wildly at the creature holding their boss. The vampire stands triumphantly over the fallen businessman, its gaze fixed on the approaching guards. The guards stare in horror as they realize their bullets are completely useless against the monster. Each round simply ricochets off the creature's skin, sparking harmlessly into the air. Their conventional weapons prove utterly ineffective against this supernatural threat. Just as the vampire lunges for the guards, Wuing soars through the air to intercept the attack. The Taoist slams the creature to the ground, reminding everyone that he still expects to be paid for his services. His enchanted blade cuts through the vampire's defenses, drawing the first sign of its blood. But the ancient monster recovers instantly, launching itself back into the fight with furious speed. With glowing red eyes and razor-sharp claws, the vampire prepares to unleash its true, terrifying power. The vampire retaliates with a fierce kick, but Wuing expertly parries the powerful blow. Wuing responds with a dynamic kick of his own, brandishing his wooden sword and a mysterious black sigil. He realizes the creature is manipulating its own blood as a weapon, a power he's never encountered before. The ancient monster extends its razor-sharp claws, turning its own blood into a deadly whip-like projectile. This blood whip slices through the air with incredible speed, aimed directly at the young Taoist. He narrowly evades the lethal strike, momentarily stunned by the confirmation that vampires actually exist. Shaking off his surprise, he decides the creature's origin is all that matters. It came from a coffin. Therefore, he resolves to fight it with the same methods he would use against any other undead creature. The two combatants meet in a blur of motion, exchanging a flurry of acrobatic strikes and parries. A glint of excitement appears in Wuming's eyes, revealing he's relishing this unexpectedly challenging fight. The vampire is suddenly struck by an overwhelming emotion, his fierce expression breaking in surprise. He realizes with horror that he is mirroring Wuming's own sorrow, a strange connection linking them. The ancient creature stumbles back, clutching his head in agony from a mysterious psychic attack. As the chaos subsides, the bodyguards' desperate cries for their boss echo across the square. They rush to Donald's side, but their attempts to revive him are completely futile. The vampire struggles to compose himself, breathing heavily to shake off the lingering mental assault. He rises to his feet, only to be startled by the calm, unwavering gaze of the young Taoist. Utterly bewildered, the creature turns away, unaware that Wuming is manipulating him with a Taoist tool. With a flick of his wrist, Wuming sends his enchanted wooden sword flying, embedding it in the ground near the fallen businessman. The bodyguards begin to argue, accusing each other of causing their boss's demise, while Wuming casually listens in. One bodyguard furiously accuses the other of freezing in fear while their boss was being attacked. The second guard fires back, blaming the first for dodging and leaving their boss completely exposed. Wuming calmly interjects, cutting through their escalating blame game. He gets straight to business, reminding them he's fulfilled his part of the deal and expects his payment. The guards scoff at his timing, but Wuming coolly clarifies their boss is not dead, just very close to it. He reveals an invisible demonic curse on the bite mark is the true cause of the businessman's condition. Their tune changes instantly, with the guards now fawning over the Taoist and begging him to remove the curse. They eagerly promise that their famously generous boss will make it well worth his while. Wuming lets out a weary sigh, realizing this simple job has just gotten far more involved. He inwardly wonders how a straightforward exorcism spiraled into such a convoluted situation. The story flashes back 3 days to China, where a talisman is placed on a man seemingly under a strange influence. A younger Wuming calmly reassures the man's anxious family, standing beside a smug-looking older Taoist. In a sudden jolt, the man sits bolt upright, his abrupt recovery startling his onlooking family. The older Taoist smirks, internally praising his disciple's work despite him possessing only a fraction of his master's power. But the son's relief is short-lived as he makes a bizarre and inappropriate comment, horrifying his mother. As they walk away, the master questions the result, and Wuming explains the man was possessed by a demon with peculiar interests. Wuming reveals the talisman, its red characters now black, proving the demonic energy was absorbed just as his master taught him. The master then changes his story, claiming the son's issue is psychological and presenting a business card for his counseling services. He confidently prepares to begin his psychological treatment, leaving the bewildered parents speechless. The master is later seen tearing down a rival's advertisement from a wall, muttering about unappreciative people. The master grumbles about the low pay from their last job, while Wuming tries to find a silver lining. He scolds his disciple for focusing on money, insisting their work is a priceless cultural treasure. Wuming agrees, but his main concern is getting something to eat once they've finished posting their advertisements. The master delivers a sanctimonious lecture on how true cultivators must rise above worldly desires like hunger. His lecture is cut short by a notification on his phone, his expression instantly shifting to one of greedy excitement. Both master and disciple stare at the phone in wide-eyed shock at the message they've just received. The message details a high-paying job in America for a client named Donald, complete with a large deposit and $1 million reward. The master celebrates their sudden fortune, revealing to a stunned Wuming that they were completely broke. He immediately books a flight to America, telling his disciple to depart alone for the mission. The master frames this as a crucial test for Wuming's growth, while secretly planning to pocket the travel money. The master fantasizes about his new wealth while giving Wuming a half-hearted pep talk about national pride. He then reminds his disciple of the most important part of the mission, securing the $1 million reward. Flashing back to the present, Wuming examines the fallen businessman, sensing something is wrong. He discovers a hidden curse attached to the demonic energy, actively blocking his talisman's power. Realizing his usual methods are failing, he prepares to use a more advanced technique. He invokes the path-seeking art, a technique designed to trace the curse back to its source. The talisman transforms into a glowing butterfly, pointing him in the direction of the fleeing vampire. He instructs the bodyguards to get their boss to a hospital while he pursues the creature. Meanwhile, the ancient vampire stumbles through the city streets, disoriented and confused. His memory is a blur, struggling to recall the fight and how he ended up in his current state. The vampire internally questions his long slumber, his memory filled with unsettling gaps. His daze is broken as he bumps into a young boy who cries out in distress over his dropped ice cream. The boy is devastated over his limited edition treat, while the vampire looks down with a hint of guilt. He internally acknowledges his fault, recognizing that no amount of money can replace the boy's lost treasure. Kneeling down, the ancient creature apologizes and reaches into his pocket to make amends. He offers a handful of antique gold coins, leaving the child staring in wide-eyed astonishment. A crowd gathers as the boy's mother tries to refuse, all of them marveling at the pure gold. The onlookers confirm the coin's value, realizing the child has just become incredibly wealthy. Distracted by the commotion, the vampire finally looks up, only now noticing his strange new surroundings. His eyes widen in shock as he fully comprehends the modern alien world he has awakened in. The ancient vampire is utterly captivated by the modern city, realizing he's awakened in a completely different world. He wanders through the streets, amazed by the bright lights and the speed of the strange metal carriages. The creature's mind reels with excitement, declaring this new time to be a truly wonderful era. His journey leads him to a bustling public square filled with people enjoying the evening. Nearby, a young couple happily prepares to take a selfie to capture their moment. The vampire, curious about the device, unexpectedly joins their photo, striking a pose. The man erupts in anger, while the vampire simply marvels at the instant magic of modern photography. Dismissing him as a cosplayer, the man angrily tells the vampire to stop bothering normal people. The man tries to drag his girlfriend away, annoyed by the strange encounter. But his girlfriend is completely mesmerized, her eyes sparkling with admiration for the stylish stranger. He mistakes a group of cosplayers for fellow superpowered individuals, noting the high spirits of this new era. A curious young woman in a witch costume with literal stars in her eyes peeks out from behind the vampire. She enthusiastically praises his vampire cosplay for its realism, leaving the ancient creature completely baffled. The cheerful witch eagerly invites the bewildered vampire to join her group for the cosplay night. She snaps a picture of him with her friends, and the vampire is surprised to admit he looks quite good in the photo. As she asks about his cosplay club, which he mistakes for a supernatural guild, a familiar paper butterfly flutters nearby. The glowing paper butterfly lands on his shoulder, startling the ancient creature with its sudden magical arrival. Wuing emerges from the crowd, his expression grim as he announces he's finally located his target. While the witch assumes Wuing is another cosplayer, the dowist directly confronts the vampire about his cursed client. The vampire's eyes widen as he finally recognizes the dowist as the first person he saw upon awakening. Wuing realizes persuasion won't work. He needs to bring the vampire back by force to secure his payment. He grips his sword, preparing to unleash his full power discreetly amidst the oblivious crowd. To his surprise, the ancient vampire bows dramatically, offering a sincere apology for their previous encounter. The vampire's pleading expression confuses Wuing, who finds the creature's sudden guilt completely bizarre. The scene shifts to the Starry Wisdom cult's headquarters, where a menacing voice declares Jack a failure. A battered Jack kneels before his superior, desperately trying to justify his retreat from the powerful vampire. His superior mockingly questions if the power granted by their god is so weak it can't even handle one monster. Jack insists his god's power is limitless, but his pleas are met with the sharp crack of a whip. The whip coils tightly around his neck, delivering a sharp, painful lesson for his failure. She yanks him closer, tauntingly suggesting he's eager to serve her and twisting his own claims of godhood against him. Jack cries out in agony as his superior's corrupting power surges through him. She forcefully stomps him to the ground, asserting her absolute dominance. Looming over her failed subordinates, she declares them unworthy of the power they wield. Her interest is piqued by the vampire, expressing a chilling excitement at the thought of a new hunt. She calls upon her ancient god, seeking guidance to locate this powerful new creature. In a desperate act of submission, Jack grovels at her feet, begging for any form of acknowledgement. She rejects his pathetic display with a swift and dismissive kick, sending him flying. As she departs with a promise of harsh training, Jack lies on the floor, disturbingly pleased with his punishment. The scene returns to the city streets, where the vampire curiously asks for the young dowist's name. The ancient creature is taken aback by the simple answer, questioning if Wuing has no other title. The vampire introduces himself as a noble who enjoys making friends and drinking blood, getting a simple acknowledgement from Wuing. When asked about his own likes, the Taoist's stoic reply is that he has no favorite food. The vampire presses further, asking about a favorite person, but receives the same empty answer. Even a question about his parents is met with the same emotionless reply, leaving the ancient creature baffled. Changing the subject, the vampire asks about the hospital's location, prompting Wuing to abruptly stop walking. The vampire questions how a foreigner could know the way, only for the Taoist to reveal his own disorientation about the current era. Wuing confesses he forgot to place a tracking mark on Donald, leading to the grim realization that they are completely lost. Faced with their predicament, the young Taoist offers a simple, modern solution, hailing a taxi. The vampire admits he has no money, so Wuing suggests pawning the creature's expensive-looking clothes for cab fare. As they discuss finding a pawn shop, the ancient vampire has a sudden epiphany, finally noticing the language Wuing is using. The ancient vampire's eyes widen in sudden, dawning realization. He questions how he can understand Chinese, a language he has no memory of ever learning. The creature admits his memory is fragmented, unable to even recall how he ended up in the coffin. He vaguely remembers waking up to a sound, his instincts driving him to attack out of a deep craving for blood. The vampire tearfully apologizes for the trouble he's caused, but Wuing remains completely unfazed. Just then, a car pulls up, and the boy from the ice cream incident happily greets them from the window. The boy's mother kindly offers the two strangers a ride, seeing that they need one. Wuing wastes no time, telling her their destination as he gets into the car, much to the vampire's surprise. As they drive down the highway, the mother asks why they're heading to the hospital so late at night. The vampire explains their friend is sick, prompting the mother to return the gold coins, insisting they were far too valuable. The vampire insists the mother take the gold back, but Wuing's greedy expression suggests he has other plans for the treasure. Refusing to take no for an answer, the vampire presses the coins on the driver as Wuing daydreams about his master's greedy reaction. His polite offer turns into an aggressive demand as he relentlessly pressures the uncomfortable mother to accept his gift. The vampire relaxes, pleased with himself, but his satisfaction is cut short by a sudden, jarring realization. Perched ominously above the highway, the cult's leader watches their car, noting the vampire isn't behaving as she expected. Wuing's critical assessment of the vampire is interrupted as he spots eerie purple spirits pacing their car outside the window. The vampire alerts Wuing to the danger, realizing the spectral creatures have now flanked them on both sides. He desperately screams a warning, but the driver sees nothing as the horde of spirits converges in front of them. A massive, shadowy tendril bursts from the road, seizing the car and tossing it violently into the air. Their journey comes to a fiery end as the car crashes down, exploding in a massive fireball on the highway. Amidst the fiery wreckage, the vampire shields Wuing, rocketing them both to safety. He lands safely on the overpass, checking on the dazed Taoist as the mother cries out in concern. Wuing notices his clothes are singed, more concerned about their cost than the immediate danger. The cult leader's attention shifts to Wuing, mockingly intrigued by the unexpected new player on the field. Wuing calmly tells the cult leader to wait her turn, as he has unfinished business with the vampire. His bold demand only amuses her further, her dark power coiling around her whip in anticipation. She lunges into the air, unleashing a massive shadowy tendril and declaring her intent to test his strength. The young Taoist braces for impact, effortlessly blocking the massive tendril with his enchanted sword. Her attack splinters into a flurry of shadowy whips, overwhelming Wuing with their sheer number and force. The mother pleads for help as the vampire watches in horror, seeing the young Taoist caught in the cult leader's vicious assault. The mother desperately offers herself to the vampire, pleading for him to spare her grievously injured son. Her only request is that he saves her child first, no matter the cost to herself. The cult leader mockingly continues her assault, treating the dangerous situation like a twisted game. But her shadowy whip is suddenly intercepted, shattering just inches away from the surprised Taoist. The vampire reveals he was the one who intervened, angrily questioning why Wuing didn't act sooner. Wuing calmly explains his skills require payment, and he knew the cult leader couldn't truly harm him. The cult leader's amusement is cut short as a mysterious red energy blast strikes her with stunning force. The vampire unleashes a furious barrage, pinning her shadowy tendrils and overwhelming her defenses. He then turns his fury on Wuing, enraged that the Taoist would demand payment at a time like this. The vampire's rage peaks as he points to the innocent victims, incensed by the cult leader's cruelty. The vampire's fury erupts, his claws extended as he refuses to tolerate the injustice. He lunges forward in a rage, while Wuing calmly recalls his master's teachings about righteous anger. The cult leader wipes a trickle of blood from her cheek, amused by the vampire's untamable spirit. She calls upon her ancient gods, willingly surrendering herself to their corrupting power. Dark energy pours from her eyes, surging through her body as she embraces the immense power boost. With shadowy tendrils writhing around her, she eagerly anticipates the second round of their confrontation. Her eyes glow with malevolent glee as she announces the next phase of her twisted game is about to begin. She unleashes a massive wave of shadowy tendrils, targeting both the vampire and the dowist. The vampire narrowly dodges the attack as the tendrils slam into the ground, causing a violent explosion. Now a being of pure shadow, she declares her intent to punish the disobedient vampire first. The vampire uses his coffin lid as a makeshift shield, bracing against the cult leader's furious assault. With a mighty heave, he sends the cult leader flying across the highway in a blur of motion. He lands hard, noting with grim surprise how much her speed has increased since their last encounter. The vampire examines his corrupted hand, realizing her touch drains control as he identifies her ancient origins. She mockingly corrects him, revealing her sect has evolved into the thriving Church of Star Wisdom. The cult leader sneers that his ancient race is on the brink of extinction, unlike her powerful new order. Unfazed, the vampire vows to show her the true, undying power of his lineage through a forbidden chant. His incantation begins, speaking of a primal journey through the very fabric of time and space. The chant speaks of a rebirth from suffering, strangely showing a vision of a young, familiar-looking boy. As the incantation concludes, it describes staring into the wicked hearts of his enemies, mirroring the cult leader's corrupted gaze. The vampire completes his chant, transforming blood-red energy into a powerful nightly aura. But his ultimate power suddenly vanishes, leaving the ancient creature utterly baffled and vulnerable. The cult leader sneers at his failure, her shadowy form poised to strike him down. She ensnares him in dark tendrils, offering the pure-blooded vampire as a prize to her ancient gods. Her hold is suddenly broken as Wuing intervenes, calmly stating he needs the vampire right now. The cult leader recoils in shock, realizing the young Taoist severed her divine connection with a single touch. Wuing complains about wasting a valuable token, while the cult leader questions if he's just an ordinary boy. The vampire desperately urges the Taoist to finish her, but the cult leader dismisses his power as a fluke. Wuing responds with a swift chop to her neck, seemingly ending the confrontation in an instant. But she reappears behind him, laughing maniacally as she declares coincidences don't happen twice and lunges for him. The cult leader commands her dark power to completely corrupt the young Taoist. But an immense golden aura explodes from Wuing, effortlessly deflecting her shadowy attack. The cult leader stares in terror at a divine presence, a power far beyond that of her own gods. This sacred energy washes over her, a sensation of overwhelming power she finds strangely thrilling. Her spirit is forcibly ejected from her body, which then kneels in complete submission before the bewildered Taoist. Wuing sighs, realizing his purification technique accidentally turned his powerful enemy into a devoted follower. With the fight over, he calmly makes a call to get the injured civilians to a specific hospital. The vampire confronts the Taoist, questioning why he let the cult leader escape when the boy is critically injured. Wuing explains his policy of avoiding trouble, but reveals a specific condition under which the child could be saved. Understanding the implication, the vampire embraces the boy, beginning a forbidden ritual to save his life. The vampire completes the forbidden ritual, leaving a glowing ethereal mark on the boy's chest. Wuing asks if the boy is now a vampire, while the creature laments that earlier intervention could have saved him. The Taoist points out the vampire's own failure cost him a valuable token, infuriating the ancient creature. The vampire defensively insists he is powerful, admitting only that there were unexpected complications. His bravado vanishes as the vampire suddenly collapses from complete energy depletion. Wuing observes that despite being weak since awakening, the vampire still risked everything to save a stranger. He recalls his master's words, recognizing the creature as a foolishly kind-hearted person driven by empathy. The scene flashes back to a younger Wuing watching his master interact with a person in need. His master scolds him for his charitable impulse, warning him against becoming a naively kind fool. The master then launches into a grand tale for the beggar, a fabrication Wuing knows all too well. The master recounts a historical tale of a generous disciple who selflessly rescued his countrymen without reward. He explains this act, while noble, ultimately discouraged others from doing good, a lesson young Wuing absorbs. The master sternly warns his young disciple to avoid becoming a foolishly kind-hearted person driven by empathy. Wuing's internal thoughts connect his master's lesson to two types of fools, one driven by justice, the other by pity. Returning to the present, he looks at the fallen vampire and wonders why he can't bring himself to despise the creature. At the hospital, the vampire places his hand on the businessman, channeling his life force to counteract the demonic curse. A crimson energy flows into Donald, slowly purging the dark magic and easing his pained expression. The guards watch in relief as their boss's color returns to normal, while the exhausted vampire collapses onto the bed. Utterly drained from the ritual, the ancient creature struggles to recover, admitting he's completely spent. He weakly asks for more blood bags to replenish his lost energy, specifying his preference for cold ones. The vampire marvels at the modern hospital, impressed by the conveniences of the new era. Now inside, he casually sips from a blood bag, noting that it's only natural for his kind to enjoy such a delicacy. Wuing internally deduces that the boy's purity allowed him to become a vampire, while an impure person would have just become fuel. The lore reveals that those bitten by a vampire become mindless zombies, endlessly spreading the curse to sustain their master. The vampire clarifies that this power is a curse, one that can be reclaimed by its original caster at any time. Wuing recognizes this power as a form of demonic magic, having seen its dark influence on both the businessman and the boy. He compares the vampire's curse to the incantations used by priests in his homeland to create hordes of powerful zombies. The vampire nervously asks if Wuing plans to turn him into a zombie, but the Taoist admits he only cares because he's getting paid. Their conversation is interrupted by a bodyguard who announces that their now conscious boss is asking to see them. Inside the room, Donald is wide awake and enthusiastically praising China, a bizarre side effect of his recent ordeal. The grateful businessman praises Wuing, who simply tells him to forget the thanks and just pay up. He starts the invoice with the promised $1 million reward for completing the mission. The young Taoist then itemizes the bill, tacking on fees for curse removal and extra spell talismans. He presents the final inflated total to the bewildered businessman, who asks about payment options. Donald changes the subject, offering the powerful Taoist a permanent, well-paying job as his personal protector. Wuing flatly rejects the offer, explaining he has to go home and cook for his master. As he leaves, he delivers a parting warning about the lingering effects of the demonic magic. He advises caution, explaining that anyone exposed will now face a chaotic and unpredictable fate. Elsewhere, the cult leader seems to sense this shift, a single drop of blood trickling down her face. The other exorcists suddenly cry out, clutching their heads as they feel the chaotic backlash of destiny. The priest urgently points out a new development, his face etched with concern. He notices the coffin is now open, and the square is eerily empty of the ghosts that once swarmed it. Annoyed that the prize has been claimed, the other exorcists begin to leave, but one of them senses something is wrong. Their exit is blocked by a mysterious, glitching figure who tells them they're too late for the prize. Without warning, the shadowy figure unleashes a devastating wave of chaotic energy. The blast instantly strikes down one of the exorcists, sending the rest of the group reeling in shock. The remaining specialists recoil in horror, realizing this newcomer's energy matches the coffin's and that he orchestrated the entire ghost attack. When questioned about his motives, the shadowy figure cryptically states that his objective is irrelevant. He then makes a chilling demand for them to hand over their souls. The aftermath reveals the square is now silent, with the shadowy figure standing victorious over the fallen specialists. The shadowy figure declares that his long and patient wait is finally over. He triumphantly announces that tonight marks the beginning of a new chapter. Elsewhere, the cult leader wanders the streets, savoring a delightful new sensation. She offers a theatrical apology to her gods, clearly relishing her recent transgression. She recalls the incredible feeling of Wuing's power, a sensation that has renewed her dark faith. Her reverie is broken as two associates confront her in a dark alley for her nightly wandering. Annoyed by their presence, she questions why they've come looking for her. The hooded man expresses his disgust before demanding to know the whereabouts of their underling, Jack. The other man delivers grim news, revealing that every other exorcist at the scene was eliminated. He then asks a chilling question, wanting to confirm if Jack was among the fallen. A dark, smoky liquid is poured from an ornate vial into the fallen Jack's mouth. The mysterious substance is forced down his throat, a grim form of medicine. Jack jolts upright, frantically pleading with the cult leader as his superior, Lord James, looks on. Lord James cuts to the chase, demanding to know if Jack was the one who eliminated the other exorcists. Jack vehemently denies the accusation, blaming the vampire, while the cult leader confirms she fought a pureblood. James questions the cult leader about the vampire's whereabouts, pointing out her failure to bring him back. She hesitates, admitting their plan was thwarted by an unexpected Asian man who aided the creature. The mention of an Asian man triggers a memory for Jack, who reacts with sudden realization. He frantically connects the dots, recalling the young Taoist who opened the coffin and was seen with the vampire. Jack confidently declares the vampire must be the Taoist's pawn, concluding the entire event was a deliberate plot. The cult leader refutes Jack's theory, recalling the young Taoist with a strange, flustered expression. Lord James considers her point, worried that their organization is now under suspicion from a larger authority. He reveals their plan to gain influence failed, forcing them to capture the culprit to clear their name. When questioned, she dismisses her concern, though she's privately fixated on the Taoist's immense power and familiar aura. A hooded subordinate mocks her uncharacteristic fear, earning a sharp rebuke from the flustered cult leader. James orders her to guide the subordinate, justifying the command by bluntly calling the hooded man weak. The hooded man accepts the mission, revealing he possesses a special power granted by their god, as per the Supreme Commander's orders. He ominously hints that now is the perfect time to finally unleash this hidden power. The scene shifts to the airport, where Wuing firmly turns down a final plea to reconsider the businessman's job offer. A bodyguard hands over his plane ticket, confirming the $1 million reward has been transferred directly to his master. The businessman offers a final, enthusiastic farewell, his opinion of China completely transformed by the experience. As the bodyguard waves goodbye, he reminds Wuing that his client has already departed. The vampire suddenly appears, cheekily explaining he's there to see the Taoist off on his journey. As the vampire muses about their strange connection, Wuing ignores him to find the airport's Wi-Fi password. Wuing bluntly clarifies that he simply doesn't find the vampire annoying, his attention fixed on connecting to the network. The vampire slumps in theatrical despair over the lukewarm compliment, prompting the Taoist to get his attention. Wuing reveals his own emotional detachment, explaining that finding someone not annoying is the highest praise he can give. The vampire's mood instantly brightens, eagerly seeking confirmation that he makes a good impression on the flustered Taoist. The ancient creature suggests they could be friends, but Wuing reveals he's an orphan who has never had any. He adds that everyone who gets close to him suffers, which piques the vampire's curiosity about his powerful master. Wuing explains his master was once on the verge of immortality, but failed a crucial trial, losing his spiritual roots. Just as Wuing prepares to video call his master, the vampire urgently warns him of a sudden hazard. The Taoist narrowly avoids slipping on a banana peel, stopping his foot just inches from the ground. He answers the video call, revealing his master's flustered face on the screen as the vampire looks on judgmentally. Wuing questions his master's strange expression, a bizarre mix of pleasure and agony. The master breathlessly claims he's in the middle of some joint exercises, his explanation unconvincing. His internal thoughts reveal a lingering regret over his lost spiritual roots. The full scene reveals the master is undergoing an intense training session with a woman, hoping to regain his power. The vampire is completely impressed by this display of humility, just as the master finally notices him on the call. The vampire, now introducing himself as Shiao, declares his desire to befriend the Taoist student. The master's eyes light up with greed, seeing a rich vampire friend as a golden opportunity for his student. Shiao offers a dramatic bow to the phone screen, showing his utmost respect to the master. Wuing abruptly ends the call, informing his master the mission is done, leaving the vampire stunned. While the vampire sputters in confusion, the young Taoist calmly checks his return flight details. As they ride the escalator, Shiao gets distracted by a plane's flight path, much to the annoyance of other travelers. The master's voice cuts in from the phone, his only concern being whether the payment has been received. After confirming the transfer, the master heaps praise on his student, promising to collect the money soon. Their ascent is violently interrupted as the escalator suddenly jolts to a stop, throwing them forward. A heavy object hurtles down the escalator, forcing the vampire into a wild, acrobatic flip to evade it. Shiao lands with concern, immediately turning to check if the unfazed Taoist is okay. Wuing looks back in alarm, realizing his plane ticket has fallen into the broken escalator. An airport official apologizes for the malfunction, admitting he doesn't know why the recently maintained machine broke. While the vampire complains about modern fragility, Wuing calmly explains the situation to the staff. He quickly receives a replacement ticket, his travel plans back on track after the minor mishap. The staff member urges them to hurry, announcing that their flight is about to begin boarding. As they head to the gate, a hooded man confronts Wuing, annoyed that he seemingly cut the long line. The official smoothly intervenes, explaining that the Dowist's case was a special circumstance. The hooded man turns away with a sinister smirk, recalling how he barely survived a previous encounter. He internally wonders how this new confrontation will play out, ready for another round. Unaware of the looming threat, the hooded man crushes a wad of cash under his boot, spoiling for a fight. A maintenance worker screams in alarm as his cart nearly crashes into the unfazed Dowist. The man bows apologetically, explaining he wasn't paying attention to where he was going. The vampire expresses a strange feeling about the situation, which the young Dowist silently confirms. The ladder beneath another maintenance worker suddenly snaps, sending the man plummeting towards Wuing. Fascio springs forward with incredible speed, catching the falling man just before he hits the ground. The vampire insists these accidents are no coincidence, as the grateful worker thanks him profusely. Wuing calmly deduces that he's been targeted by some kind of curse causing these misfortunes. Fascio is alarmed by this revelation as Wuing explains it's a destiny-altering curse. He clarifies that his fate is being manipulated by a pathbreaker, a powerful curse caster. Realizing the curse can't be cast from a distance, he scans the crowded terminal for the culprit. The vampire insists they team up to hunt down the hidden curse caster, but Wuing dismisses the offer, telling Fascio to leave while he handles it alone. The Dowist coldly explains that misfortune follows him, so it's better for Fascio to stay away. Fascio scoffs at the warning, boasting that a vampire's resilience makes him immune to such a petty curse. His bravado is cut short as a massive beam crashes from above, with Fascio blaming the cult leader for the attack. 2 heavy metal poles slam into the ground, a clear escalation of the unseen threat. The vampire panics, questioning if Wuing can truly face the next, more dangerous attack on his own. A spark of understanding flashes across the young Dowist's face as he finally grasps the situation. He realizes this isn't a series of small curses, but one continuous spell that's growing exponentially stronger. From the crowd, a sinister figure watches, gloating that the ball of fate is already rolling towards a catastrophe. The hooded man smirks, vowing to prove his worth to everyone who ever doubted him. He reveals his face, wildly proclaiming he is the one truly blessed by the ancient gods. As an official reports the emergency, the vampire worries that the next disaster will harm innocent bystanders. Wuing calmly deduces that to break this curse, they must interfere directly with fate itself. Fascio panics about their dwindling time, but the Dowist is focused on finding the curse caster. An airport announcement calls for passengers on their flight to China to begin boarding. The vampire has a sudden epiphany, urgently demanding Wuing hand over the plane ticket. With a decisive rip, Fascio tears the ticket in two, shocking the young Dowist. Wuing explains to the baffled vampire that he's reevaluated the curse, and its power isn't simply increasing. He recounts the pattern of events, noting the curse's intensity actually decreased with the last incident. The vampire explains the plane ticket was the key, theorizing a far deadlier fate awaited Wuing in the sky. He deduces the curse's true purpose was a fatal plane crash, with the earlier mishaps just building its power. Wuing realizes getting a new ticket re-established the curse, putting him back on the path to disaster. Fascio triumphantly declares that by destroying the ticket, he has successfully broken the curse's hold. Their victory is cut short as the hooded man suddenly collapses, convulsing violently on the airport floor. A helpful bystander claiming to be a doctor rushes in to perform CPR on the fallen man. The doctor's efforts are thwarted by a strange device strapped to the man's chest, blocking his attempts to help. The curse-caster gasps desperately, his life slipping away as the crowd watches in horror. With a final shudder, the man stops breathing, leaving the would-be rescuer in a state of shock. The device on his chest activates, revealing a ticking timer, a time bomb triggered by his own demise. The crowd erupts in panic as someone screams they only have 10 seconds to escape the blast. Wuing realizes his assumption was wrong, but notes that the map of his fate has at least been altered. He explains the curse's original plan was for him to face a hijacking incident on the plane. Since he missed the flight, the lingering curse instead gave the bomber a fatal heart attack, activating the device. Fascio blames himself for the chaos, while Wuing pragmatically suggests they escape the immediate blast zone. The Dowist internally confirms the ticket was the turning point, but realizes Fashio's interpretation of it was flawed. Wuing rapidly reevaluates the curse, searching for a different angle to understand its true nature. His train of thought is broken by a child's cry for help, triggering a sudden, horrifying understanding. In the chaos of the stampede, a little girl falls to the ground, pleading for her life. Her father looks back in anguish as the timer on the bomb ticks down to its final 5 seconds. The father cries out in despair, begging his daughter's forgiveness as he's swept away by the crowd. Fashio tells Wuing to get to safety, his expression hardening as he decides to act. With only 2 seconds left, the vampire moves in a blur, snatching the child from the path of the stampede. As the timer hits 0, Fashio shields the girl, bracing for an explosion of unknown magnitude. He realizes that carrying her through the blast is too risky, forcing a split-second change of plans. In a desperate gamble, Fashio hurls the child towards the Dowist, trusting him to make the catch. The bomb erupts in a blinding, concussive wave of energy that engulfs the terminal. Fashio's silhouette is caught in the heart of the blast, absorbing the full, devastating impact. He grits his teeth against the overwhelming force, fearing he might be torn apart by the explosion. At the last moment, Wuing's hand darts through the chaos, seizing the vampire's wrist to pull him from danger. The enraged vampire warns the Dowist that getting closer will only lead to their mutual destruction. He internally berates himself, feeling useless for endangering the one person who showed him kindness. Fashio struggles against Wuing's grip, demanding to be released from the glowing energy. With tears streaming down his face, the vampire begs to face the danger alongside the Dowist. Wuing ignores his pleas, declaring this is the end as he begins to extract the vampire's power. He reveals his plan to use Fashio's own power and memories to create a protective seal. The Dowist grimly tells the vampire to rest, prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice. But just as the seal forms, it shatters unexpectedly, interrupting the Dowist's spell. A monstrous wave of red energy erupts from the vampire, completely engulfing the stunned Wuing. Onlookers stare in disbelief as the explosion takes on a bizarre, otherworldly form in the terminal. The fiery explosion slams into an unseen barrier, containing the blast completely. Onlookers speculate about the Dowist's power, while a more knowledgeable man scoffs at their ignorance. He recognizes the vampire's own high-ranking ability rebounded, creating a protective shield. The vampire's crimson energy had surged uncontrollably, clashing with the Dowist's technique. As the power dissipates, the ancient creature looks on in pained confusion. He stumbles backward, his ultimate power suddenly vanishing as Wuing watches impassively. The crowd continues to film, capturing the bizarre scene of the 2 survivors in the terminal. Fashio collapses to his knees, utterly drained from the chaotic energy backlash. Wuing calmly asks if the vampire is injured, receiving only a silent, stunned look in return. With tears streaming down his face, Fashio admits his condition is more complicated than just being hurt. Fashio wipes away a tear, admitting he was overcome by a sudden, inexplicable wave of sadness. Wuing casually inspects his wrist, noting a minor injury from the blast but dismissing it as insignificant. The vampire angrily confronts the Dowist for his reckless heroism, but Wuing calmly suggests they find a more private place to talk. As they walk through the terminal, Fashio is stunned to learn the curse is broken, with Wuing confirming the vampire's theory was partly right. The Dowist clarifies that while destroying the ticket changed his fate, the true key was the motivation behind the act. A diagram illustrates how each failed attempt escalated the curse's power until one incident finally managed to influence his path. Fashio realizes his own action was independent of the curse, deducing the spell needed to directly affect Wuing to be broken. Wuing reveals his original plan was to take a minor controlled hit from the explosion to break the curse, incidentally saving the vampire. Their conversation is interrupted as the hooded man from the boarding line grabs the Dowist's shoulder with a menacing look. Wuing responds with a powerful kick, explaining that this physical solution saves him the trouble of using 4 valuable spells. The vampire stares in confusion as Wuing identifies the fallen man as the curse caster. Wuing recalls being touched, explaining that physical contact is how the curse is cast. He reveals he was hunting the man all along, waiting for the right moment to act. As another accident happens nearby, Wuing explains that once the curse's principle is understood, it's manageable. A bottle flies through the air, another seemingly random mishap aimed at the Dowist. Wuing effortlessly catches the projectile, demonstrating how to end the curse's influence. While the apologetic bystander distracts them, the curse caster makes a run for it. The vampire wants to give chase, but Wuing stops him, warning that Fascio has now become a target as well. The young Taoist gives a grave warning about the dangers of meddling with the laws of fate. He calmly explains that the curse will now rebound, forcing the fleeing caster to bear its full weight. The fleeing curse caster smirks, convinced that despite his failure, he's finally witnessed the true potential of his power. He vows that his targets can't remain vigilant forever, and he will strike when their guard is down. As he runs into the street, he dismisses their survival as mere luck, just as a bus bears down on him. His expression turns grim, knowing that his target's luck is about to run out. In a flash of red, the curse violently rebounds onto its caster. Onlookers watch in horror as the bus crash leaves a grim scene, wisely keeping their distance from the cursed aftermath. Wuming's phone buzzes with a video call from his master, and the vampire peers over his shoulder, intrigued by the caller ID. Fascio points at the screen, recognizing the master's profile image as a powerful sealing sigil. As Wuing answers the call, Fascio questions him about the sigil, but the young Taoist has few answers. The vampire suddenly realizes the sigil matches a fragmented memory, just as Wuing calmly informs his master about the curse and the foiled terrorist plot. The vampire connects the sigil to a lost memory from his coffin, a vision filled with anger, regret, and pain. He's tormented by the resurfacing emotions, desperately questioning the forgotten trauma that haunts him. While the Taoist checks for flight updates, Fascio's unease grows, convinced he must recover this vital lost memory. The desperate vampire snatches the phone, demanding to know if the master on screen recognizes the powerful sigil. He presses the unfazed master for a way to break the seal, hoping for a solution to his forgotten past. The master immediately tries to monetize the situation, demanding a consultation fee even after Fascio admits he's penniless. The master scolds his student for trusting a scammer, just as police officers approach the chaotic scene. The master abruptly ends the call, leaving a frantic Fascio to be confronted by police demanding their cooperation. The vampire desperately tries to get the master back on the line, completely ignoring the insistent police officers. His patience finally snaps, and the enraged vampire glares at the officers, telling them to back off. The vampire's rage boils over, his eyes glowing as he threatens the approaching officers. The police draw their weapons in response, demanding the two men surrender immediately. But the vampire vanishes, leaving the officers to focus their attention on the now primary suspect, Wuing. The lead officer warns the Taoist to cooperate, threatening serious consequences if he resists. Wuing calmly allows himself to be placed in handcuffs, showing no signs of resistance. As the officers lead him away, the vampire reappears, looking utterly baffled by the turn of events. Fascio suspects this is an illusion, questioning if Wuing used forbidden magic on the police. Their procession is interrupted by a stylish woman who casually calls out to them. She removes her sunglasses, revealing a familiar face and mentioning it's been a century since they last met. The woman leaps into a joyful embrace with the vampire, revealing she is his long-lost sister. The woman Haifei tearfully asks where her brother has been, while the stunned vampire can only say her name. He asks why she's there, and she explains she just arrived on a business trip. She reminds him that he vanished for a century, leaving their clan to search for him endlessly. With growing frustration, she questions why he never made contact, unaware of the pain his absence caused. Her composure breaks as she bursts into tears, leaving the vampire panicking at her overwhelming display of emotion. He tries to explain his disappearance wasn't intentional, prompting her to demand a full explanation right there in the terminal. A bystander suggests they find a more private place, but Haifei dismisses the idea, refusing to wait. Her demeanor shifts as she creates a distorted space, speaking of a sanctuary built on sorrow. She traps them in a twisted dimension, declaring her intent to be the master in this new inverted reality. Nearby, two figures with glowing red eyes dismiss the scene as uninteresting before walking away. Haifei explains her power creates a private space by distorting reality, assuring her flustered brother they can now speak freely. She processes the information about his coffin, her expression turning serious as she considers a new possibility. She aggressively questions Wuing, suspecting he imprisoned her brother until Fascio quickly refutes the idea. Scolding her brother for his trusting nature, she insists on verifying the Taoist's identity with her unique senses. The vampire firmly stops her, telling his sister that her invasive habit is completely unacceptable. His sister is visibly hurt, reminding him that he has never been so harsh with her before. Her emotional outburst continues, accusing him of no longer caring for her and sending the vampire into a flustered panic. The vampire collapses in a fit of despair, blaming himself for ruining their reunion until his sister tries to calm him. His mood instantly brightens at her reassurance, prompting a deadpan comment from his sister about his rapid emotional shifts. Fascio proudly introduces Wuing as the new friend who freed him, but the timeline of yesterday leaves his sister speechless. Haifei eyes the young Taoist with suspicion, wondering what makes him so special to her brother. She tries to sense his blood but finds nothing, as if he has no scent at all. The Taoist's essence feels like pure, transparent water, completely undetectable to her vampiric senses. Fascio confirms they were caught in the explosion, shocking his sister who had dismissed them as unimportant. The vampire proudly declares their shared ordeal has made them friends, a bond forged in fate. His sister grabs his arm, her expression turning serious as she prepares to ask a crucial question. She questions why he was in a coffin instead of hunting Van Helsing, a name that leaves Fascio completely baffled. She reminds him of the legendary hunter, recalling her own fear when her brother insisted on facing him in a duel. The vampire clutches his head in agony, admitting he has no memory of this supposed duel or the infamous hunter. His sister finds his amnesia unbelievable, while the desperate vampire pleads for answers about his forgotten past. Haifei recounts the tale of Van Helsing, a mysterious hunter who appeared a century ago to mercilessly hunt their clan. She describes this as their clan's darkest hour, a time when the unreasonably strong hunter massacred even the most powerful families. In a flashback, a younger Haifei begs her brother not to go, but he resolutely chose to face Van Helsing to save their people. To prepare for the battle, the major families performed a reverse embrace, channeling their power into him. This ritual granted him a temporary, unprecedented surge of strength, combining the might of many into one. The resulting power was enough to rival Van Helsing, but the outcome of their legendary duel remains a complete mystery. After the fight, both he and the hunter vanished, but since the borrowed power never returned, the clan believed he had survived. Their hope was shattered when a strange curse marked by a powerful sigil suddenly sealed the blood bond. The vampire is stunned by this revelation, but Wuing calmly interjects that nothing is truly impossible. The young Taoist identifies their sacred blood bond as a form of demonic magic, explaining it can be countered by an equal amount of spiritual power. Haifei angrily dismisses the Taoist's explanation, refusing to believe a child could understand their clan's magic. She explains that for 100 years, their clan has been diminished because the power they lent him never flowed back. When Fascio asks about their clan's current state, his sister smugly reveals they've managed to thrive despite the difficulties. She boasts about her own success, revealing she now controls American finance and introduces her two associates. The two women formally greet Fascio as their young master, though he admits he hadn't even noticed their presence. His sister clarifies the women are bank CEOs, explaining their chance meeting at the airport was a pure coincidence. Fascio feels sorry for her busy life, but she brushes it off before her attention shifts to a recent event. The vampire has a sudden realization, stating that some of their clan's lost power has just returned. Haifei reveals that during the explosion she had a vision of the curse's sigil weakening. She explains the curse's power then surged, a sensation felt by the entire clan, and asks if her brother experienced it too. Fascio reveals to his bewildered sister that he was the one who just broke the curse. The vampire clarifies he didn't just forget, but the seal on his memory momentarily loosened during the blast. The loosening seal not only released a torrent of chaotic energy, but also triggered something else. The energy surge allowed him to see fragmented memories, confirming the coffin was where the seal was placed. His sister realizes breaking the curse is the key, while Fascio excitedly announces he's found a clue from the Taoist's master. As Wuing prepares to leave, the desperate vampire grabs him, begging him not to go. The vampire frantically explains he can now afford the master's fee, seeing a path to his recovery. He proudly declares his wealthy sister can easily pay the master's fee, dismissing the Taoist's previous client. His sister questions why he's relying on a human child, but the vampire insists his intuition about the clue is vital. She questions if the master is short on cash, but Wuing calmly explains his master believes in monetizing every opportunity. Haifei offers to pay double, and Wuing calmly names the surprisingly low price of $200. The young Taoist provides his master's bank details, noting he was just confirming the amount. Agreeing to the deal, Haifei tells her brother to wait with Wuing while she handles the transfer. Privately, however, she scoffs at the idea, judging the master to be as annoying as his apprentice. Instead of paying, she orders her associates to use their financial power to freeze the master's account. With a cunning look, she adds a condition for the master to ever see his money. The only way to unfreeze the funds is to make her brother happy, just as Wuing gets a call from his master. On the video call, the flustered master awkwardly acknowledges that the vampire has a question for him. Fascio eagerly asks how to break the seal, but the master claims he no longer has the spiritual power required. At an ATM, the master sighs in defeat before suddenly remembering a junior brother who might be able to help. Wuing is surprised to learn his master has other disciples, a fact he was never told. The master reveals his junior brother is on a spiritual mission in a small American town. He then forwards the exact location to Wuing, giving them a clear destination. As Wuing plans to book a flight, his master unexpectedly orders him to accompany the vampire. The master reminds his student of his earlier advice to make friends, insisting he must now help his new companion. He gives a final command for Wuing to stay by the vampire's side and report back on their progress. Fascio excitedly tells his sister they have a new lead, while the young Taoist seems less than thrilled. Haifi checks the location on the phone, calculating that Blue Ash Town is a short flight away. Their journey takes them to the sprawling suburbs of Blue Ash Town, USA. Elsewhere in town, a freelance exorcist named Alice arrives, immediately sensing a powerful wave of resentment. Alice confirms the town's supernatural rumors are true and prepares to deal with the local evil spirits. The vampire respectfully greets the exorcist, mistakenly addressing her as the senior master, Wan Fu. He earnestly pleads with her for guidance on how to break the powerful curse that binds him. The flustered exorcist denies being Wan Fu, though she's momentarily distracted by his good looks. Fascio is stunned by the case of mistaken identity, questioning if she truly isn't the master he seeks. His sister pulls him back, scolding him for confusing a young woman with an old Chinese uncle. Alice confronts Haifei, accusing her of having inappropriate thoughts about her brother, sparking a heated argument. The vampire tries to smooth things over, blaming his poor daytime vision for the misunderstanding. Alice asks if they're also looking for a spirit, and Fascio eagerly asks if she's seen him. She admits she just arrived, but suggests she might have a lead on the person they're searching for. The group stares in confusion at the young exorcist's strange declaration. Alice deduces they're outsiders, showing them a social media post where Blue Ash Town's supernatural rumors are trending. She reveals the town's top ranking is because every exorcist who came to investigate has mysteriously vanished. As Alice explains the disappearances, Haifei questions her bravery while Wuing performs a quiet, complex incantation. The exorcist smugly proclaims that she is far from ordinary, setting herself apart from her missing peers. She strikes a dramatic pose, boasting about her top 3 ranking as a celebrity in the supernatural community. Alice proudly displays her case log, confident that solving this mystery will secure her the #1 spot. She confidently tells the group to leave, dismissing their search for a man she believes is already gone. The vampire internally thanks her for the warning, but remains resolute, driven by his urgent need to find the master. Fascio's determination hardens as he vows not to give up, his intensity catching the young exorcist's attention. The exorcist dismisses their stubbornness with a casual wave, walking away after giving her warning. She nonchalantly blows a massive pink bubble with her gum, showing her relaxed attitude. The bubble takes on a playful, ghostly form, highlighting her quirky and confident personality. As Alice departs, Haifei scoffs at the idea of being scared by mere evil spirits. But Wuing suddenly interjects, his serious expression revealing this is no ordinary haunting. The Taoist explains his calculations show the entire area is built on a distorted feng shui alignment. He shows them a spiritual map, noting a 90-degree deviation that is unusual but not inherently dangerous. However, a second opposing distortion surrounds the first, creating a much more complex problem. Wuing reveals this double distortion creates an extremely ominous clash of elemental forces. He concludes this unique alignment won't attract spirits, but will dramatically amplify the resentment of any ghost already present. Wuing concludes this place will inevitably create an extremely powerful, vengeful spirit. Fascio frantically insists that the master's disciple must be actively exorcising spirits at this very moment. He urges the Taoist to use his spirit-finding techniques to locate his martial uncle, questioning his hesitation. Haifei reminds Wuing of his master's orders, accusing him of trying to get paid without doing the work. The young Taoist gives her a sharp look, clearly unamused by the accusation. After a moment of consideration, Wuing curtly agrees and tells them to follow him. As they begin their search, the exorcist Alice passes a mother and child on the street. The little girl excitedly points upwards, trying to get her mother's attention. She marvels at the massive, ghost-shaped bubble floating above the quirky exorcist. When the child asks where to buy one, Alice angrily shoos her away, clearly not a fan of kids. The exorcist is annoyed that her bubblegum spirit is visible to ordinary people, confirming the town's potent evil energy. As she walks, she notices the Taoists' group is coincidentally following the same path she is. An overhead view shows both parties converging at the same intersection, led by Wuing's precise directions. The young Taoist continues to navigate, confidently guiding his companions through the suburban streets. Both the exorcist and the Taoist team find themselves heading down the exact same road. Alice finally confronts them, accusing the group of following her to compete for the same prize. Haifei scoffs at the accusation, coolly stating they found the location on their own merit. The exorcist grows furious, questioning how they could track the energy without revealing their own spiritual presence. Wuing calmly explains his method relies on feng shui, as releasing energy would only alert their target. Alice angrily dismisses his explanation, calling all foreign spiritual arts nothing more than elaborate scams. The exorcist stops, deciding to test the group's skills from a distance. Wuing calmly instructs his companions to turn right, leading them with quiet confidence. They follow his direction, moving deeper into the seemingly ordinary suburban streets. Alice smirks, convinced they've fallen for her misdirection and are just amateurs. She internally scoffs at their attempt to outsmart her, dismissing them as she goes her own way. The group arrives at a deserted bridge, where Haifei questions the Taoist's seemingly flawed navigation. Wuing confidently states this is the correct location, but then realizes the exorcist's earlier display of power had a consequence. He deduces her careless release of spiritual energy has likely alerted the very entity they're all seeking. With no sign of his martial uncle, the vampires press Wuing for his next move. Their discussion is suddenly interrupted by a polite voice from just out of frame. An older man approaches the group, asking about a strangely dressed middle-aged man. Fascio's eyes widen as he realizes the description matches the person they're looking for. His sister quickly asks if the man's name is Wan Fu, putting the pieces together. The man eagerly confirms the name, desperate to know if they have any information. He worries aloud that Wan Fu has also vanished, just like the other investigators. The man introduces himself as the town's mayor, explaining that a series of strange events have plagued the area. He details the escalating horrors, from spooky shadows and music to the mysterious deaths of local animals. The mayor confirms that the specialist he hired to investigate all disappeared without a trace. He then reveals he met Wan Fu just today, noting that he carried a similar bag to Wuing's. The young Taoist cuts in, gravely asking the hesitant mayor if anyone has died in this cursed place. The mayor confirms their fears, revealing a fatal car accident happened on this very road months ago. He recalls Wan Fu confirming the danger, asking for Wine to perform a ritual and telling him to return in 2 hours. The missing master had guaranteed he would banish the spirits for a fixed price of $1,000. As the mayor finishes his story, Fascio notes that Wan Fu's method seems suspiciously familiar. The vampire's expression turns serious as he presses the mayor for more details about the accident victim. The mayor recounts the tragic tale of the John family, whose son took on all responsibility after his father left. He explains the young man died instantly in a car crash during a storm, leaving behind his mother and little brother. Fascio immediately asks for the location of the surviving family members, sensing a new lead. The mayor points them toward a house at the foot of a mountain, and the group sets off. At the same house, a hand with pink nails knocks on the wooden door, revealing another player has arrived. A young boy peeks through the door, cautiously asking who's there. The exorcist politely explains she'd like to ask the homeowner a few questions. The boy calls out to his mother, who refuses to see any visitors from the darkness within. The grieving mother instructs her son, George, to handle the visitor outside. In a small act of kindness, Alice offers the young boy a piece of her favorite gum. Alice awkwardly admits his family's tragic story moved her, despite her usual dislike of children. The exorcist leans in, asking George to tell her about his brother before he passed away. The boy recalls his brother was a kind and warm-hearted person with a great talent for music. A flashback shows the older brother playing guitar, his dream being to touch the world with his songs. He remembers his brother's excitement at reaching a talent show final, believing their financial struggles were almost over. George sadly recounts that his brother's death was a complete shock to everyone. The exorcist then asks a pointed question about the boy's father and his reaction to the death. The boy's face twists in rage, declaring his father is dead to them and wishing him ill. He reveals a dark history of abuse, explaining their father's cruelty started when they were just children. The father's descent continued into addiction, where he squandered their finances and stole from his own family. A single act of kindness, a birthday guitar, resulted in a brutal attack that left their mother permanently disabled. As the story concludes, Fascio's group arrives and the vampire seethes with rage at the injustice. The vampire vehemently agrees with the boy's sentiment, with Haifei's associates and Alice nodding in support. But the exorcist suddenly snaps, angrily rejecting their sudden show of solidarity. Fascio's confusion is met with more hostility as Alice calls them intruders, sparking a new argument with Haifei's associate. The exorcist cuts the argument short, asking the boy 2 final questions about his brother and any recent strange events. She presses him for details, her intense gaze fixed on the boy as she asks about anything unusual. After a moment of hesitation, the young boy denies that anything strange has happened. The exorcist bids the boy farewell before angrily warning the Taoists' group to stop following her. As she leaves, Fascio asks Wuing for his findings, but the Taoist reports the area's energy feels completely normal. Wuing holds up his compass, explaining his initial theory of a broken energy pathway seems incorrect. He concludes the evil spirit must be located near the lake, a statement that makes the young boy visibly nervous. The Taoist continues to explain his deduction, unaware of the boy's subtle but anxious reaction. But as Wuing glances at the boy, his eyes widen with a sudden dawning realization. The boy flinches under the Taoist's gaze, his guilty expression confirming Wuming's unspoken suspicion. The boy panics and flees, screaming that he knows nothing as the vampire tries to question him. His sister notes the boy's suspicious behavior, connecting it to his brother's death near the lake. Haifei suggests they investigate the brother's burial site, convinced they'll find a clue there. Their search for answers now shifts to the deceased brother's final resting place. At the grave, they find no evidence, with Haifei's associates unable to detect any trace of demonic energy. Fascio asks the Taoist for his findings, but Wuing confirms the cemetery's ominous aura is entirely natural. From a distance, the exorcist Alice watches the group through binoculars, clearly irritated by their presence. Alice suddenly confronts them, furiously accusing the group of being more persistent than the spirits she hunts. Haifei wearily admits to following her, prompting the exasperated exorcist to tell them to join her plan. Now working together, Alice complains they almost ruined her stakeout, while Fascio questions if the boy will appear. Alice begins her explanation by stating the known fact of the brothers' tragic accident. She notes the key inconsistency: George's lack of genuine grief despite their supposedly strong bond. The exorcist connects his strange lack of emotion to his deliberate denial of the town's supernatural events. She confidently declares the evil spirit is the deceased brother, who is still in contact with George. The vampire quickly deduces her plan is to use them as bait to lure the cautious spirit out of hiding. Alice reveals her own spirit, Hakimi, can track evil entities, but their target fled upon sensing her presence. Haifei's associate sarcastically points out that Alice's own powerful aura is what scared the spirit away in the first place. The flustered exorcist quickly changes the subject, announcing their only option now is to wait. As night falls, a sudden noise from the darkness signals that their stakeout is about to pay off. The stakeout drags on, with a visibly bored Alice yawning into her communication device. Fascio complains about the long wait, but Alice's spirit retorts that they're lucky she's letting them stay. As Haifei argues back, Alice silences them, having spotted their target through her binoculars. Just as predicted, the young boy George arrives at his brother's grave, calling out into the darkness. A disembodied, ghostly voice responds, tenderly calling George his dear brother. The vengeful spirit of the older brother materializes, a skeletal musician wreathed in green flame. George looks up with grim determination, announcing they've finally reached the last day of their plan. The spirit grins menacingly, preparing to enact the final sinister part of their pact. But their reunion is interrupted by the sudden cheerful appearance of Alice's bubblegum spirit. The vengeful spirit reacts instantly, grabbing his younger brother to pull him out of harm's way. Alice's spirit unleashes a powerful binding spell, trapping the two brothers in a swirling vortex of pink energy. Alice makes a dramatic entrance, vowing to stop their destructive plan. She strikes a flashy pose with her spirit Hakimi, announcing their joint arrival as heroes of justice. The panicked young boy tries to explain the situation, insisting the exorcist has misunderstood everything. But Hakimi ignores his pleas, lunging forward to deliver a powerful blow to the two brothers. The vengeful spirit intercepts the attack, shielding his younger brother from the full force of the blast. George is thrown back by the impact as Hakimi's attack is successfully deflected. The boy cries out in horror as one of the spirit's pink tendrils shoots past him. Hakimi's appendage swiftly wraps around the young boy, completely immobilizing him. The bound child is slammed to the ground, crying out from the sudden assault. Enraged, the vengeful spirit shatters the binding spell, unleashing a torrent of power as he roars in fury. Hakimi strains against the dark tendrils, its cute form struggling with the overwhelming force. The bubblegum spirit is thrown back, its cheerful demeanor replaced with shock as the dark energy overpowers it. But the dark energy wasn't from the ghost. It was Fascio, who now stands between the exorcist and the brothers. Alice recognizes the nature of the power, realizing she's dealing with a seductive ability far different from a simple haunting. The vampire intercepts the attack meant for the brothers, taking the full brunt of the spiritual blast himself. The exorcist identifies the immense power as vampiric, while Fascio warns her not to get distracted. Regaining her composure, Alice orders her spirit to launch another assault on the two brothers. The musician's ghost braces for impact, ready to counter the incoming pink energy wave with his own power. Fascio intervenes again, his dark tendrils intercepting Hakimi's attack before it can reach the spirit. The vampire bares his fangs, telling the exorcist to go all out as he prepares to handle the situation himself. The bubblegum spirit collides with the vampire's dark energy, their powers clashing violently. Seeing an opening, the vengeful spirit lunges forward, ready to strike the distracted bubblegum entity. The musician's ghost unleashes a massive burst of spiritual power, completely overwhelming the pink spirit. Hakimi dissolves into a sticky puddle on the ground, seemingly neutralized by the ghost's powerful counterattack. Undeterred, the exorcist declares it's time for her final purification, preparing to end the fight herself. Alice unleashes a devastating wave of pink energy, engulfing the vengeful spirit in a massive blast. The young boy frantically screams for them to stop, insisting they have completely misunderstood his brother's actions. With tears streaming down his face, George reveals his brother was actually protecting the entire town. The ghost's form dissolves into a wisp of green energy, soaring into the night sky as the others watch in shock. Alice is stunned by a spiritual wave she's never felt before, while Wuing observes the event with silent understanding. The vampire gazes upward, sensing the true source of the overwhelming spiritual energy. Haifi realizes the immense power originates from the lake and is now hurtling directly toward them. The young boy struggles against the bubblegum spirit's hold, desperate to escape its grasp. He reveals to the confused spirit that his brother once saved him from a far more malevolent entity. He insists his brother was a guardian, secretly protecting both him and the entire town from the shadows. As the boy blames them for the chaos, a monstrous wave of water erupts from the lake before them. A monstrous blue hand rises from the depths as the true evil spirit declares its imminent victory. The true villain fully materializes, a powerful water demon who gloats that the gathered energy is finally his. Realizing she's been tricked, the furious exorcist orders her spirit to attack the true mastermind. But the demon effortlessly swats her spirit aside, showcasing its immense and terrifying strength. The musician's spirit lands a desperate blow, but the demon barely flinches from the impact. Pinned by her own defeated spirit, Alice realizes her power is completely outmatched. The water demon glares at the musician, understanding the ghost is the only thing preventing its ultimate power. It declares that as long as the protective spirit remains, its true potential will stay locked away. The musician's ghost stands firm, vowing that the monstrous entity will never destroy him. The demon reveals its twisted plan, threatening to possess the younger brother's body to gain a physical form. With a horrifying grin, the demon calls out to George, its eyes glowing with malevolent intent. Its massive claws reach for the terrified boy, declaring he will become its new vessel. The protective spirit screams in desperation, urging his younger brother to flee for his life. But before the demon can strike, a flash of red energy intercepts the attack, revealing a new challenger has entered the fray. The water demon realizes the ominous feeling it sensed earlier came from this mysterious red assailant. The crimson figure lands with immense force, its energy crackling across the ground. It unleashes a swirling vortex of power, confirming it is the source of the demon's unease. As the relentless assault continues, the demon panics and tries to call for a truce. The once mighty demon is reduced to begging for its life, completely overwhelmed by the attacker. Ignoring the pleas, the crimson figure lunges forward, intent on completely obliterating the demon. The red energy dissipates to reveal Wanfu, the missing master, landing a decisive blow. Wanfu looks around in frustration, wondering why his powerful exorcism chant suddenly vanished. The demon complains that Wanfu's sudden appearance startled it, brandishing a sword defensively. The supposed demon, now a blonde man, tackles the stunned Wanfu in a tearful brotherly embrace. The injured blonde man urgently tells Wanfu to cast a time illusion. The musician's ghost glares intensely, its eyes glowing with a menacing red energy. The blonde man tells the boy to escape with the exorcist, but she refuses to leave her brother. Alice reveals her brother is a spirit bound to this location, warning her protective spell is fading. The boy tearfully refuses to abandon the musician's ghost, vowing not to lose him a second time. A voice reminds everyone that the water demon previously stated it couldn't destroy the musician's ghost. Wuing finally intervenes, explaining they are both fighting spirits, a term that confuses the young boy. The young Taoist elaborates that a fighting spirit is born from a cycle of vengeful killing. He reveals that when both victim and killer become spirits, they are trapped in an evil spirit bind, unable to harm one another. Wuing concludes the only way to break the bind is for one spirit to possess a human, a feat requiring immense power and a strong connection. Wuing explains the spirit's ability to possess the boy proves a deep, familial connection. He drops a bombshell, revealing the monstrous spirit is their long-lost, abusive father. The Taoist then reveals the ultimate tragedy. The musician brother was the one who ended their father's life. A flashback shows the musician's fatal crash, the very event that turned him into a spirit. The story rewinds further, showing the father's cruel nature as he terrorized his family for money. In a painful memory, the young boy tries to defend his injured mother from their father's rage. The father's fury escalates at the mere mention of the older brother, who he saw as a threat. When the musician returns to defend his family, he's met with a brutal confrontation. The desperate struggle ends with the son overpowered by his father's cruel strength. Even in his final moments, the musician's only thought is for the safety of his younger brother. The father's cruel taunts fill the air as he belittles his son's attempt to fight back. A brutal struggle ensues, filled with the sounds of a one-sided confrontation. The musician's legs give way as he's overpowered by his ruthless father. In a desperate act of defiance, the son restrains his father from behind with a thin cord. As the younger brother watches in horror, the musician makes a fateful decision to end the violence. The father's body collapses, leaving the musician's son standing over him in the aftermath. The weight of his actions settles upon the son, as his family witnesses the tragic outcome. Later that night, a fierce storm rages over the town's bridge. Under the cover of darkness, the son carries a heavy burden toward the river's edge. He disposes of the evidence, casting the dark secret into the churning water below. The son stands alone on the bridge, his dark deed complete as lightning splits the sky. Overwhelmed by his actions, he drives away in the storm, his grief turning into a fatal mistake. The blonde man explains that the father's spirit returned for revenge, leading to the musician's tragic end. George admits he initially dismissed his brother's death as a coincidence, blind to the town's growing darkness. That changed the night he came face to face with the monstrous spirit of his father in the woods. Even as a spirit, the father's twisted sense of ownership over his son was unmistakable. The boy recoiled in terror as the monstrous spirit lunged, ready to claim him, but a powerful burst of musical energy suddenly erupted, intercepting the attack. The father's spirit stared in disbelief, enraged by this unexpected interference. He then saw his other son, the musician's ghost, standing as a guardian between him and the boy. The boy insists his brother is a protector, whose very presence weakens the cursed spirit of their father. He tearfully recounts how his brother, now a ghost, once protected the town and played music just for him. Meanwhile, the exorcist is comically neutralized by her own spirit as Wanfu questions Wuming's silence. Wuming calmly reveals he kept silent to lure the father's spirit out, who now identifies the Taoist as the true threat. The Taoist explains the father's spirit only appeared because it believed it had enough power to win. Paraphrasing his master, Wuming states the spirit overstepped its bounds, causing its own downfall. The monstrous spirit gathers its remaining energy, lamenting it's just shy of the power needed for its ultimate goal. Believing victory is near, it unleashes a final, desperate wave of power at the young Taoist. Wuming effortlessly leaps over the attack, evading the spirit's ferocious assault with ease. As the Taoist prepares a counterattack from above, the spirit is suddenly struck by a surprising blast of pink energy from below. The Taoist lands atop the massive spirit, declaring its arrogant display is finished. He swiftly slaps a powerful talisman directly onto the demon's forehead. Wuming calmly begins a soul conversion spell, his focus absolute. A torrent of spiritual energy and ancient symbols engulfs both the father and son spirits. The young Taoist stands unfazed, masterfully controlling the swirling vortex of power. The exorcist Alice watches in complete disbelief, stunned by the scale of his technique. Haifei's associate realizes the boy's power is unnaturally immense for someone so young. She silently compares his strength to that of her own tribe's most powerful elders. The father's spirit, now in a weakened human form, coughs violently as the spell takes its toll. Having lost his malevolent energy, the spirit decides this place is too much for him and prepares to depart. Wan Fu and the blonde man inspect the young Taoist, realizing his clothes signify he's one of them. Wan Fu proudly confirms his identity, revealing he was sent by the young Taoist's master. The blonde man sarcastically points out that while he was searching, Wan Fu got himself trapped and needed his nephew's help. A flustered Wan Fu insists he was hiding inside the spirit intentionally, about to deliver the final blow. The scene shifts to the young boy joyfully running towards his ghostly brother. Spotting the musician's ghost, Wan Fu shouts a frantic warning about the second spirit. The blonde man rushes to intervene, desperately trying to explain the misunderstanding. He reveals the musician's ghost is a guardian, its protective hands reaching for the boys. The musician's ghost fiercely protects his brother, proving the boy's point that not all spirits are evil. Wan Fu clarifies the spiritual law. A peaceful heart leads to a good spirit, while a hateful one creates an evil entity. Wuing challenges this notion, questioning why a good person would become a spirit with the same goal as his father. The Taoist reveals the musician's true horrifying plan, to possess his younger brother's body and be reborn. As the boy shouts in disbelief, Wuing calmly explains he used a soul conversion spell to banish their father. He continues, stating his energy-gathering technique collected only a fraction of the father's power, implying the rest went elsewhere. Wuing reveals the chilling truth. The musician's spirit, a ghost of slaughter, absorbed most of the energy. The young Taoist concludes that all the brothers' heroic acts were a ruse to gather enough power for his own rebirth. The musician's ghost remains silent, its sinister grin confirming the Taoist's devastating accusation. The young boy looks at his brother in horror, his voice trembling as he asks if the terrible accusation is true. The spirit finally speaks, its voice filled with resentment as it asks if they understand the sacrifices it made. It recounts its tragic life and unfulfilled dreams, questioning why its chance at rebirth is being denied. The musician's spirit unleashes its full power, angrily demanding to know why the Taoist is interfering. Wuing looks back in disbelief, questioning the spirit's accusation that this is none of his business. The Taoist's expression hardens with resolve, his gaze turning sharp and decisive. Shiao and his sister watch the escalating confrontation with grim anticipation. Wuing launches himself forward, declaring he's interfering simply because he wants to. He swiftly slaps another powerful talisman directly onto the enraged spirit's forehead. With a focused hand sign, the young Taoist prepares to unleash another powerful technique. The young boy screams for them to stop, desperate for his brother to fulfill his dream. Shiao looks on with a pained expression, silently pleading for them not to harm the spirit. Wuing turns to the boy, coldly asking if he understands the price for that dream is his own life. The boy reveals he knew the plan, explaining he asked his brother to play for him every time they met. He wanted to learn all the songs to fulfill his brother's dream in his place, leaving the spirit speechless. With a determined smile, George declares he's willing to sacrifice his life for his brother's dream to come true. A flashback reveals George intentionally brought the Taoist to his brother, setting up this final confrontation. He opens his guitar case, explaining he wanted to learn the last song his brother ever composed. The boy asks his ghostly brother to teach him the song so they can play it together one last time. The musician's spirit agrees, its form flickering as it prepares for their final bittersweet performance. The two brothers begin to play their guitars in perfect unison, one living and one a spirit. Their harmonized voices sing of dreams and chasing light, a poignant duet in the darkness. Sitting together among the graves, they play their final song, a somber performance before the planned sacrifice. The spirit is moved by his brother's beautiful voice as they perform their final song. The ghostly brother acknowledges George's talent, admitting it surpasses his own. He makes his brother promise to carry on his musical legacy and share it with the world. As his form dissolves into light, the spirit entrusts his unfulfilled dream to his grieving brother. The spirit's energy scatters into the wind, leaving the onlookers to witness the poignant farewell. Wan Fu explains the spirit didn't reincarnate but transformed from a vengeful entity into a benevolent one. The spirit's essence has now bonded with the guitar, becoming one with the music itself. Wuing approaches the desolate boy, telling him his brother hasn't truly left him. As George plays, his brother's spiritual energy manifests in the music, proving he's still present. The Taoist reveals a kind spirit can live on by imbuing its essence into a cherished object, carrying a beautiful belief. The Taoist explains the brother's spirit now resides in the guitar, just as Alice's spirit manifested as candy. The young boy asks with renewed hope if his brother will now stay by his side forever. Wuing confirms it's theoretically possible, but voices his suspicion about how easily the vengeful spirit changed. The Taoist's lingering question hangs in the air, questioning if such a transformation is truly possible. As Haifei urges her brother to speak with Wanfu, the vampire sees a reflection of himself in the young boy. Fascio clarifies it's George's fierce determination that reminds him of himself, much to his sister's confusion. The vampire has a moment of self-reflection, realizing his own stubbornness can cause harm to those around him. With newfound clarity, Fascio solemnly vows that he needs to change his ways. His sister questions if this means he'll regain his memory, while Wanfu dismisses their concerns as youthful angst. Wuing interjects, noting that while spiritualists seek freedom from desire, there's a crucial exception. Wanfu explains their sect embraces desire, believing there are many paths to the Tao. He notes that stubbornness led one spirit to evil and the other to kindness. The master concludes the flaw isn't in the trait, but in the heart that guides it. A flashback reveals a young boy's determined vow to find his birth parents. The scene shifts to an orphanage where the boy asks a young Wuing about his own ambitions. His friend questions Wuming's lack of interest in finding the parents who abandoned him. The young Taoist calmly reasons that seeking a painful truth serves no purpose. Frustrated by his cold logic, the friend gets up and walks away. His friend's parting thought questions if Wuing even cares about his own life. Returning to the present, Wuing reveals Fascio's memories are sealed by talismans, asking if Wanfu can break the curse. The blonde man challenges Wuing, stating that memories are part of life and questioning his indifference. He presses further, asking if the young Taoist is still the same person he once knew. Turning to Wanfu, the blonde man asks for help, but the master cryptically states that all accounts must be settled. Wanfu shamelessly demands a consultation fee first, even offering a small discount for his services. Their discussion is interrupted by the grateful mayor, who has returned to thank them for solving the town's problem. As the mayor offers the payment to Wanfu, the blonde man tries to point out who actually did the work. The master ignores him and takes the money, reasoning that since they consulted him, the fee is rightfully his. Wanfu puts his arm around his disciple, confidently stating Wuing would surely help his friend. But the young Taoist interrupts, revealing the matter is far from over. Wuing explains the father's spirit was intentionally created, suspecting the true source of evil lies with the body at the bottom of the lake. Divers discover the father's body chained at the bottom of the lake, surrounded by a demonic circle for ghost creation. They surface to report their grim findings to the group waiting on the pier. The mayor examines a photo of the underwater scene, as Wanfu looks on in shock and gets chided for his incompetence. Wuing humbly downplays his deduction, claiming his discovery was merely a coincidence. He explains he connected the unique spiritual marks on the father's body to the ghost that appeared in town. The blonde man realizes the ritual circle is just like the one that imprisoned him, pointing to a single culprit. He presses Wuing, asking if the person who sealed him is the same one who created this new evil. Wanfu cuts in, explaining the situation is more complex as he prepares a small talisman-adorned bell. The master rings the bell, sending a powerful wave of spiritual energy across the lake's surface. The energy wave travels to the lake bed, illuminating the sinister ritual and confirming their worst fears. The master's energy tears through the water, striking the sinister ritual circle below. Wanfu hands the mayor a talisman, instructing him to place it at the lake bed for 9 days to prevent further trouble. As they walk, Wanfu questions how his disciple knew about the complex ritual, and Wuing credits his master's teachings. The master trails off, realizing Wuming's teacher left out a crucial piece of information. Wanfu drops a bombshell, revealing the ritual's creator is the very enemy who destroyed their sect, a fact Wuing was never told. With a pained look, Wanfu realizes this secret burdened Wuming's master and begins to explain the history of their Shiao sect. He describes their sect's unique philosophy of following nature, a path with powerful techniques only a select few can master. Wanfu reveals their unconventional lifestyle led many to mistake them for demons, when in reality, they simply embraced life's pleasures. The master claims their path leads to immortality, but the blonde man reveals his own master lost his powers after failing this very trial. Wanfu's expression darkens as he realizes the blonde man's master was deceived about the true nature of his failure. Wanfu prepares to share a painful history with his disciple, Wuing. He reveals Wuming's own master was crippled by the same enemy who destroyed their sect. A flashback shows the master in his prime, a peerless warrior on the brink of immortality. He was awaiting his final trial, a pivotal moment that occurred 2 decades ago. But on that fateful day, a mysterious enemy arrived, challenging their entire sect. The enemy's power was so immense that even the master was helpless as his allies were struck down. In a desperate last stand, the master sacrificed his own spiritual path to unleash a cataclysmic final blow. The enemy vanished in the blast, leaving only Wanfu and the master as the battle's sole survivors. The devastating attack shattered the master's power, leaving him a broken man consumed by guilt. Wanfu finishes his story, warning Wuing to keep this secret, as his master still carries the heavy burden of that day. The blonde man presses Wanfu for details, but the master admits the enemy's identity and motives remain a mystery. Wanfu reveals the attacker was an enigma, and he's been searching for answers ever since that fateful day. He confesses his long-held suspicion that the enemy survived, with the ritual circle being the first real clue he's found. The master confirms the ritual's energy signature is a perfect match to the one used by their attacker 2 decades ago. As the group processes the shocking news, Haifei asks for a description of this powerful foe. But Wanfu delivers another surprise, admitting he has no idea what their enemy even looked like. A flashback reveals the enemy's power was so immense it obscured their face, appearing only as a terrifying silhouette. Fascio makes a startling connection, realizing the description matches the legendary figure Haifei mentioned, Van Helsing. Wanfu is stunned by the name, while Haifei grimly states that the pieces of the puzzle are finally falling into place. She reveals her vampire clan suffered a nearly identical catastrophe at the hands of the same enemy a century ago. Haifei confirms the enemy's description perfectly matches Van Helsing, who attacked her clan a century ago. Desperate for answers, Fascio begs Wanfu to undo the Heartlock spell, but the master reveals it requires a special key from the original caster. Fascio's hope fades as he realizes the seal is unbreakable without the original caster's help. But Wanfu reveals a long-shot alternative, asking the vampire a critical question. Who was the first person he saw when he awoke? The vampire points directly at Wuing, identifying the young Taoist as the first person he encountered. Wuing corrects him, recalling he first saw a religious figure before the newly awakened vampire attacked him. Fascio is confused but certain, insisting his first memory upon waking is of the young Taoist. Wanfu erupts with excitement, declaring this twist of fate is exactly what they need to break the spell. He explains the plan. Wuing must cast a specific spell, creating a bridge for Wanfu to launch a powerful counterspell and shatter the seal. Wanfu theatrically declares its destiny, while Haifei scoffs at their weird rituals, prompting the master to hurry them along. Wanfu begins his preparations, asking the vampire for the exact time he awakened. The master performs a quick calculation, pinpointing the specific date and hour of the vampire's revival. He then asks for the vampire's birth date, gathering the final piece of information for his spell. After confirming the vampire's elemental alignment, Wanfu turns to his disciple for the same information. But Wuming's simple admission of not knowing sends the master comically tumbling to the ground in shock. Wanfu erupts in a fiery rage, ashamed that a member of his sect is so detached from his own history. The master's anger instantly vanishes when Wuing calmly explains he's an orphan with no knowledge of his parents. Composing himself, Wanfu accepts the complicated situation as a trial ordained by fate. He offers his guidance to the young Taoist, reminding him that his journey is just beginning. The master then hands over his business card, cheekily reminding everyone that his help isn't free. The blonde man recognizes the card's design, prompting Wuing to examine it more closely. The young Taoist makes a startling connection, realizing the card is identical to his own master's. The story cuts to a new location, where a vibrant stream of musical energy flows through the sky. A shadowy figure plays a powerful melody, their song summoning followers to reshape the world. The white-haired figure continues their ominous performance, promising eternal remembrance for their followers' deeds. The music acts as a communication line, relaying a report of a failed mission and the death of an agent. The melody ceases instantly, the pianist's hands hovering over the keys in silent contemplation. The mysterious leader, Pandora, issues a new command to immediately gather the other heads of the organization. Answering the call, 2 figures land with imposing force before the reporting agent. The purple-haired woman voices her irritation, complaining that the urgent meeting has ruined her beauty sleep. The hooded agent denies responsibility, shifting the blame to their leader, the president. Pandora, The white-haired leader announces to the gathered heads that their operative Miller is dead. The purple-haired woman scoffs, questioning if the pathetic Miller was ever a match for a target she herself couldn't tame. Another member asks if she saw the news about the new generation, but she retorts that she was too exhausted to care. The group pieces together that Miller's death is connected to a major incident at an airport that was covered up. Pandora corrects their assumptions, preparing to reveal the true cause of their agent's demise. The leader explains that Miller was killed when his own curse rebounded directly onto him. As the others mock Miller's pathetic end, Pandora reveals the mission was ordered by the old god who sensed a threat. The woman questions their motives, asking if their goal wasn't to impress another organization with a recent display of power. Pandora reveals the timing was no coincidence, as the Phenomena Society reached out the moment the old god sensed the new threat. The hooded figure reveals the target is the Pillar of Fate, a name that shocks the purple-haired woman. A prophecy foretold the old god would face a trial against this pillar, an entity capable of influencing fate across dimensions. This person not only survived the old god's curse, but reflected it back, confirming they are the prophesied one. The purple-haired woman Chanel demands to know what the old god intends to do with this powerful individual. The leader, Pandora, turns to Chanel, reminding her that she bears the touch of the old god and carries the target's trace. Pandora orders her to hand over the trace to uncover the pillar's secrets, but Chanel questions if Pandora herself could become a threat. The leader begins to play the piano, ominously warning Chanel that her line of questioning is dangerous. Pandora coldly declares that Chanel's faith in their god is no longer strong enough. With a powerful strike on the keys, the leader unleashes a wave of sinister musical energy. The melody ensnares Chanel, her body contorting as the sound becomes a painful, binding force. Chanel's silhouette contorts in agony as the musical notes bind her like chains. She cries out in pain, the sinister music coursing through her very being. The spell subsides, leaving Chanel on the floor, broken and submissive to Pandora's will. With tears streaming down her face, the leader announces she will now proceed with her plan. Now fanatically devoted, Chanel lunges at the hooded agent, demanding the trace for the sake of their god. From the stage, Pandora orders the agent to perform a divination using the trace they possess. The hooded agent reluctantly begins the ritual, channeling immense energy into a crystal ball. The divination ends with the agent collapsing in terror, unable to speak of what she saw. Another member grimly concludes that the target is a terrible omen for their god's future. The terrified agent reveals a devastating prophecy. The target will cause the old god's downfall in just 3 years. The leader declares their new priority: the Pillar of Fate must be eliminated at all costs. A member scoffs at the plan, pointing out the world's pollution limits how many can use their full power at once. Another operative, holding a gun, chides his colleague for his foul language, clearly unimpressed. The gunman proposes a powerful alliance, suggesting they combine their unique abilities granted by the old god. His counterpart considers the offer, intrigued by the idea of their perfect combination. He agrees to the team-up, but issues a stern warning not to be double-crossed later. The scene shifts as Hyphy explains their next move is to uncover their lineage's secrets to solve her brother's mystery. The blonde man tells Wuing that his involvement has now made him an essential part of their quest. He suddenly grabs the young dowist's hand, his grip firm and resolute. The blonde man pulls Wuing forward, announcing their journey to China to uncover the truth, much to Haifei's surprise. The blonde man expresses his misery, frustrated that the truth is always just out of reach. He tries to appeal to Wuing, assuming the young Taoist is just as eager for answers. Haifei suggests seeking help, but the blonde man refuses, pulling Wuing away from the idea of meeting Duke Vlad. His sister insists Vlad was a great help to their clan, but he remains stubbornly against the idea. Relenting, Haifei agrees to their plan, but insists on arranging a private plane for their safety. When asked if she's joining, Haifei reveals she has unfinished business and will follow them later. Soon after, they arrive at an airfield where a private jet and its crew await them. The staff warmly greets the blonde man, who seems to know them by name. Both the blonde man and Wuing are impressed by the luxurious interior of the private jet. As the blonde man marvels at modern travel, Wuing dryly notes that he finally understands his master's love for money. Aboard the jet, the blonde man sets his cup down with an air of mild annoyance. He stands impatiently, questioning why the plane has yet to depart. Growing concerned, he heads to the cockpit to investigate the delay himself. He recoils in shock upon discovering the entire flight crew has been knocked unconscious. Wuing calmly assesses the situation, noting the crew was neutralized by a powerful, non-lethal blow. The blonde man panics, baffled how his own clan members were defeated so silently and swiftly. Rushing to the open door, he discovers the ground crew has met the same fate on the tarmac. His fury grows as he surveys the scene of his incapacitated allies scattered across the airfield. Kneeling beside a fallen crew member, he desperately demands to know who is responsible for the attack. Wuing grimly concludes that this ambush is connected to the mysterious figures who previously attacked him. Wuing suddenly launches forward at incredible speed, leaving the blonde man to stare in utter confusion.